Hello and welcome to this week's video about the second fundamental technique in ice cross. My name is Luca Delago and today I'll go over the basics of scrubbing. Scrubbing plays a huge role in our sport because even though it's going downhill most of the time, it's not going downhill all of the time, because most tracks have a bunch of obstacles that actually send you uphill. And most of the time you want to touch this uphill ice as little as possible to either keep your speed or avoid overshooting the landing. But scrubbing is not only important from a rider's perspective, because you can gain time on your opponents and avoid pain by not overshooting stuff. It's also very interesting from an outside perspective, because riders develop different scrubbing variations over the years, and sometimes you'll even see them use different variations over the same obstacle while battling against each other. So in today's video, I'll first go over the basics as usual, and then towards the end we'll have a closer look at what those 4 variations look like. So let's get to it. Alright, let's start off with this jump as an example. Now, what's the challenge here? Obviously, you don't want to ride out this whole takeoff since it points straight towards the sky and against gravity. Facing it head on will slow you down quickly, so you want to leave this ramp as early as possible to keep your momentum. And you also want to land sooner rather than later. On this landing here, overshooting isn't that big of an issue, but there are sections where the track is going to punish you for getting too much air with too much speed, like here in Edmonton, for example, when it was at this moment that I knew I fucked up. To avoid that, you have to get 3 things right. First, as you go through the transition, you want to stand up as tall as possible. And if you watch the previous episodes about pumping, you understand how a great pump sets you up perfectly for a great scrub. Second, know when it's time to leave the track. You have to find the earliest spot where you'll still make it over the edge of the jump without riding up any further in the transition. And third, you have to tuck your body to avoid hitting the edge of the jump. Again, just like pumping, scrubbing is all about bending and extending, just in opposite order. This distance here, the difference from standing tall to being in a full tuck, is what you need to maximize. The bigger the difference, the earlier you can exit the ramp, and as a consequence, you keep more speed and you'll also have a smoother landing and more time to skate or get ready for the next obstacle. So once again, stand up tall, find your exit point, and make yourself small. Now there's one more detail that's important for you to not only land, but land in a balanced position, especially on features where both takeoff and landing are steep. On obstacles like that, you need to create a lot of forward rotation. You don't need the full 360 degrees, but still a good amount to be able to land with your skates under you. You can see that the angle shortly before takeoff and your landing angle are pointing in completely different directions. That's a lot of degrees you have to cover, and to pull this off you need fine control of your center of mass. You can initiate the rotation by shifting your weight in front while still pushing against the transition. The centripetal force is now passing behind your center of mass, and that's going to result in forward rotation. Similarly to how the steering wheel is going to spin clockwise if you push it in this direction. Now, getting the rotation is easy. What's difficult is to get the right amount. You need to let go of the ramp, pull up your knees and start flying at just the right moment. Once you lost contact, there's not much you can do other than roll down some windows and hope for the best. Alright, let's now shift to the different scrubbing variations. For many years, the go-to option was the classic knee tuck to the chest. And up until the last 2 years, it was really the only variation that was used. And even today, it's still the most common one. Next up is knee scrubbing. As you ride up the transition, you bend your knees, but try to extend the hip. In general, I would say that this is more difficult than the classic knee tuck, but there are some features where I think it's not only faster, but easier as well. The third style is the hip scrub. It's kind of a hybrid out of the first two. You bend at the knee but also at the hip, bringing both legs to one side of your body. I shied away from this technique for a while because it's so asymmetrical, but now it developed into my go-to scrubbing move. The fourth and final variation on this list is the hurdle scrub. As you go up the transition, your front leg shoots forward, similar to how you would jump over a hurdle in track and field. And I've actually never tried this before shooting the riding clips for this video series, but I'm glad I did it and I practiced it now because it can be very useful over certain sections. Alright, that's it as far as the basics go, but I'm already very excited for next week's episode, so make sure to tune in again because I'll go over the pros and cons of each variation and see how they match up against each other over different kinds of obstacles.